excellent program.
And I think to your point of our schools being safe in Brevard County, they're safe. There is no question about that. And that's why we're seeing bullying be our number one tip.
Right.
You know, if the schools weren't safe, then we would see cases about weapons coming on schools. We're not seeing a lot of that. We're there for that option, but we're seeing, most importantly, bullying is our number one tip. So that speaks to what the crimes are most frequently occurring on campus.
Excellent. And you know, when we come back, we're going to take a break here for just a minute. We're going to talk about some success stories and perhaps some of the more unique aspects of Crimeline that people may not have been aware of before, some of the things that have gone on in the past, and where we're going in the future with Crimeline. And we'll be right back, and thanks for joining us.
The Melbourne Police Department, committed to your safety, leveraging the capabilities of its law enforcement professionals, providing you with the best in police service. The Traffic Enforcement Unit facilitates the safe and expeditious flow of vehicular and pedestrian traffic in the city with the goal of reducing accident hazards. The Criminal Investigations Division is a close working counterpart of the Patrol Division. The Criminal Investigation Division is responsible for the follow-up investigation of felony crimes and examination of crime scenes for evidence.
Crimeline, 1-800-423-TIPS. We pay cash for crooks. No names, no faces, no hassles. Call us day or night. You're eligible for up to a $1,000 reward if we use your tip to make an arrest. Crimes happen every day in our community. You know they are wrong, but do you care enough to do something about it? Call the Anonymous Tips Hotline today, 1-800-423-TIPS.
Good evening and welcome back. Thank you for joining us this evening. If you're just joining us, I'm Steve Mims, the Melbourne Police Chief for the City of Melbourne. With me this evening is Barb Bergen. She's the Executive Director of Crimeline out of Orlando. And you know, tonight we're talking about Crimeline and making anonymous tips, and we've talked about how the system works and how people receive their money if they're entitled to a reward and that process. We're going to talk for a minute about when you call in a tip. It's important that you be a good witness, a good observer, and some of the questions you're going to be asked so that you're prepared. When you call in a tip, you know, it's not just a matter of picking up the phone and saying what you want to say. There are some specific questions that may be asked of you, and we want you to be prepared for that so that you know what to look for or what information is going to be asked of you. And then we're going to talk briefly about a current homicide in Melbourne that's open that we want to talk about this evening for just a moment. And then we'll wrap this thing up. And Barbara, when someone calls into Crimeline, what is an example of some of the things they're going to be asked?
Well, obviously we're not going to ask your name because you're going to be anonymous. Let's make sure we still remember that part of it. But what's real important is that you have as much information at your fingertips as possible. And here's the reason why. When you call 911 or you call the local police department, Melbourne Police Department, those operators actually are probably going to be able to send an officer to you because they're going to know where you're at, or find you through 911, or have the ability to reach back out to you if they don't get all the questions answered. We don't have that option at Crimeline. We have to ask you every question possible relevant to the case you're reporting while we have you on the phone, because then we rely on you to come back to us. So you're going to get a lot of questions, and sometimes it might seem like why are they asking me all these questions? We're asking you these questions because it may be the only chance that we have to talk to you. And we're going to ask you questions like, do you know their name? Do you know their street name? There's a lot of people out there who you might be surprised, even some parents who can't remember the date of birth of some of their kids. So we don't expect you to maybe know a date of birth, but we want you to tell us an approximate age. When we're talking about a robbery suspect, we want you to tell us their physical build. One of the things that's pretty interesting when we ask you, what was the color of the car or the color of the shirt they were wearing? Well, if you just say green, that could be a lot of different colors. So we're going to drill down a little bit and we're going to ask you, was it forest green? Was it lime green? Help us a little bit better with that. Because in the investigative side of it, that could become very relevant in some of these cases. So we're going to ask about the location. And the location, as you know, especially over here in Brevard County, so many little agencies butt up next to each other, so we're always trying to find out who's working the case. And so if you don't know the physical address, we're going to ask you to describe the house. Describe the intersection that it's closest to. Give us the color of the house if it's a drug house. Tell us about the cars that are in the parking lot or the parking area or the garage or something. So I would ask that you be patient, because understand this. The more you give us, more than likely the more successful the tip's going to be, and then we resolve that case quickly.
The quality of the tip can affect the quality of the reward.
Absolutely.
So that's why we need as much information as we possibly can. And you touched on something, you know, we don't know who you are, so we can't call you back and ask you follow-up questions. So we got to get it right the first time.
Right.
So that's why it's so critically important. And you know, I mentioned we wanted to talk about a homicide case here in Melbourne for just a few minutes. On June 20th of this year, just last month, Caper Williams was shot and killed in the parking lot of his apartment complex at 3000 South Monroe Street in Melbourne. And this vicious crime was committed by some suspects that I'm sure have maybe talked about this crime out in public. There may be someone who knows something about it. They may be in fear of retaliation. They may not know who to call. But now tonight, you know, if you know anything about the murder of Caper Williams, you're absolutely encouraged to call Crimeline and tell us what you know, and maybe you'll be able to help us solve an as yet unresolved homicide and get these criminals off the street. That is one of the key factors in Crimeline, and we can talk about that for just a minute. Some of the success stories of Crimeline over the years, and it's all about getting the bad guys off the street, making the community safer, and if they're in jail, they're not breaking into your stuff, they're not hurting your family members. You may not have been the victim of the crime, but if you don't help us get the bad guy off the street, you or one of your family members may be the next victim.
Right.
So,
and Chief, I want to touch on that a little bit because I think it's really important. I spent 10.5 years as a homicide detective, so I understand having a case that's sitting there and you're not getting much cooperation from the community. I mean, we go to cases or shootings where there's hundreds of people in a club and somebody's been shot and you have not one witness that wants to cooperate. There's a lot of reasons for not cooperating. Fear of retribution. Simply not wanting to get involved in the legal system as being subpoenaed and things like that. Just personal reasons that you don't want to be in the mix of all of that. And we understand that in the law enforcement side of it, so that's one of the reasons that we exist. But I would urge anybody out there right now, you're watching this show, if it were your mother, brother, sister, family member who had been shot on that day, would you not want other members of this community to just simply pick up the phone and make a call? Even if they don't want to be subpoenaed, even if they don't want to testify or talk to somebody in a uniform or down here at the police department, the bottom line is this: you really need to stop and think. If it had been your family member, would you not want other community members to come forward and do the right thing?
exactly.
So I urge them, you know, that's why we exist, is to help that side of it.
And I saw you made some notes there.
I did.
Why don't you jump into your notes and tell us about some of the things that have been going on in the last 12 months?
I just want to talk about the last 12 months because I think it sort of shows what we do on a daily basis. In the last 12 months, Central Florida Crimeline has made 883 arrests, and that has solved over 1,100 cases. So 883 people went to jail, but we solved 1,100 cases. We have seized, just in the last 12 months, $1.6 million worth of drugs. $1.6 million in 12 months are off the street that your children will not be able to get their hands on, your family members won't be able to use.
All through anonymous.
All through anonymous tips. And we have recovered and seized 127 firearms. Those are guns that are not going to be used at drug houses and robberies or other situations. And at the end of it, if it's about the money, if you're a tipster who wants to do it for the cash, in the past 12 months, the board of directors have voted more than $250,000 in rewards for people to receive for those cases that we just talked about.
Some excellent stuff. And That's off of, what is this, 11,967 tips.
Right.
So 11,967, we'll say people,
Right.
you know, it could be the same person multiple times, but, and that does happen. You know, if you're the kind of person that wants to make an extra $500 a week, and you know bad guys, and you want to turn them in, there's your opportunity to make a quick $500 a week or so, turning in bad guys on warrants or anything else that leads to an arrest. So there is some money to be made, $250,000 out there to share in absolutely a worthwhile endeavor of keeping you, your family, and your community safe, and keeping criminals off the street. And we want to thank you for joining us tonight. Barbara, thank you for being here.
Thank you for the opportunity to make sure your community knows what we do.
And if you have any questions, we'll put the information up on the screen for you, as we have been throughout the show, on how to get a hold of Crimeline and some of the information that we've talked about. And as I've told you the last couple of times we've been together, we want to hear from you. If you have some topic or some more information that you'd like to know about law enforcement and what we do, we'd be happy to hear from you. We'd like to be able to talk more about some topic that's of interest to you, and we'll put the information on how to contact us up on the screen. Thank you for joining us. We appreciate it.